Hey guys, it's Bridget with Sandy Seed Company, and today I'm going to be talking about soil temperature. Now, for most of us in zone 9 and 10, we don't really think about that much because we live in a beautiful climate and our soil temperature is almost always ideal. But it's still really good information for you to know and understand the why, because it kind of takes you to an expert level of understanding more about soil microbiology and really to understand what's happening in your garden in particular times of the year. All right, so I'm going to be sharing a lot of information about soil temperature and showing you how to use a soil temperature thermometer. But remember, there's one thing that's really important about soil temperature, and I'm going to share it in this video. Okay, guys, so please don't get bored. I know soil temperature is not like the sexiest thing to talk about in the garden, but it is a really important concept, what I would call a core garden concept to understand, to make all the things you grow better in the garden by understanding how temperature, whether it's in your soil or in the air, affects plant growth. So stick around so I can get into all of that in this video. Okay, so why do we care about soil temperature? Well, it affects a lot of different things with the plant, and I'm standing in front of my greenhouse because I want to point out the reason why we use a greenhouse when you're seed starting. It's to change the temperature, both the ambient temperature and indirectly the temperature of the soil. Well, when you're direct sowing something, you don't have a greenhouse over your soil. You have to take into consideration the temperature of the soil, because that is directly going to affect how quickly your seeds germinate. In general, if I can just make some quick generalizations, the cooler the soil or the colder the soil, the slower everything will be. Not only the germination of the seed, but also the activity of the microbiology that's in your soil is going to slow down significantly. And that in turn affects the way in which a larger plant grows. That's because a larger plant in cooler soil can't uptake fertilizer as quickly, especially if you're using organic fertilizer. It breaks down a lot slower because there's less movement in the microbiology. You can almost just think of colder soil or cold soil as being like, I don't know, Michigan after a snowstorm. People aren't out as much. There's not as much happening, right? Soil is the same thing. It's a city underneath our feet, and temperature really affects the way that it moves and it changes, which in turn affects the plant's growth. Now, in contrast to that, warm soil, it's like PB in San Diego in July. There's so many people out, everybody's surfing, and the city is packed, and everyone's busy, and they're wearing practically no clothes because it's San Diego. Really, the stark difference there, I can just imagine in my head, a cold, stormy day in Michigan or a beautiful 80-degree beach day in San Diego. That's the difference between what your soil city looks like depending on your soil temperature. Okay, so please don't start fretting, because here's the most important thing to know about soil temperature is it's a continuum. There's no black or white. Well, except for if you're in Alaska and the soil gets totally frozen, you're obviously not growing anything in that. But soil temperature is a continuum, and what the plants do on that continuum depends on whether the soil is cold, optimal, or maximum temperature. So let's actually go look at a soil thermometer and show you what our soil temperature is and why the plants are doing what they're doing. Okay, so we're in the garden, it's November, it's the fall in zone 9 and 10, and the average temperature today is gonna be around 70 degrees. I'm sorry, other places in the United States, don't be jealous, but it's gonna be about 70 degrees today. And so let's actually look and see what the soil temperature is in the garden. So what's great about these soil thermometers, for those of you who are a little more geeky and you really want to enjoy some of the science behind gardening, they're very inexpensive, and you can get one, stick it in the ground, and see what the actual temperature is. It does take a second for it to register, and you'll see it says minimum, optimal, and maximum. And it's registering just about, what does it say? A tad over 60 degrees in the soil. And remember, how deep you go, the soil will change slightly. So this is only, about 6 inches deep. But the reason why I care about this is because I have direct sown seeds here, and I want to know what the soil temperature is where I'm sowing these seeds. I'm still in the optimal range. Now, let's say you're in a part of zone 9 and 10, maybe a little bit more elevation, maybe a little bit more east where it gets colder. Luckily, there's a lot of things that you can do to actually change the soil temperature slightly. I'm talking like 1 to 2 degrees, but that makes a very big difference in how quick your seeds will germinate or how happy your plants are. So let me show you guys something cool. If I pull this out and even just do, you know, a tiny bit, just like an inch in instead of 6 inches, you can see the thermometer is slightly moving upwards. And throughout the day, this is going to change because obviously as the sun hits the top of the soil, it's going to start to warm up a little bit more. So it is a gradient. The deeper you go, the cooler the soil is going to get to a certain level, and then it's going to stable out. Now, if I want to alter the temperature of my soil slightly to get either faster seed germination or happier plant growth during, say, the cool season, very simple things I can do. Compost retains a lot of heat, and so you can add compost around your plants to warm them up. In fact, in other climates, a lot of people will put massive amounts of compost on top of perennial plants to keep them from freezing. You can do the same thing with mulch. Now that's not as applicable in our zone. The biggest thing is row cover. Now I know it sounds silly, it's just this like thin little sheet, and you think, oh, what is a tiny little piece of fabric gonna do? This tiny little piece of fabric can alter the temperature by 1 to 2 degrees, which sounds like nothing, but to a germinating seed or a growing plant, that is everything. What this does is it traps in moisture, and as we know from like 6th grade science class, moisture holds more heat than dry, right? So there's more humidity in there, and it's gonna alter the temperature quite a bit. I wanna try to talk to both the people who are like super geeks and really wanna get down to the science, and then also those of you who are like, I don't care, I just want my plants to grow. Remember, it's a continuum. And if you live in a colder climate, you're gonna care more about soil temperature because it's gonna affect your plant growth more than in zone 9 and 10. Luckily for us here, we have a cool season and a warm season. And at the beginning of both of those seasons, the soil temperature is going to be slightly less than optimal. And as you go into the core part of that season, you'll see, for example, in warm season, when we're in the core of warm season, the soil temperature is really warm and it's very easy to direct sow. And then in cool season, when we're in the core of cool season, the soil is going to be much cooler, which is going to lead to easier, quicker germination of lettuces, onions, and other cool season crops. So for example, let's say it's early season, warm season, and you want to plant your beans, and you took your thermometer and you put it in the ground, and you're like, man, it's not quite optimal temperature, but I really want to get a jump start on the season. You can actually hill your beans, because what's happening, again, 6th grade science class, an arch or a hill is going to have more surface area for the sun to hit it, so it's going to warm up more. It's one of the reasons why on farms we actually make beds and then we cover it in a black plastic, because that warms up the soil so that we can put in our tomatoes early and other crops. Now just remember, anytime you're trying to push a season, meaning you're trying to either plant super early and get a head start, you need to do that with caution, because even if you can get the soil temperature to be close to germination temperatures, you got to think about the ambient temperature of the air and just the general health of the plant. So sometimes pushing it early is not necessarily worth it. But I really just want you guys to think about temperature in a whole new way. It doesn't just matter the temperature in your greenhouse or the temperature inside when you're starting your seeds. The soil temperature does dictate how a plant grows, and if you can understand where the soil temperature is in the growing season, you can just have a better understanding of Mother Nature in general, which will make you a better gardener. So if you like the content of this video and you're a grower in zone 9 and 10, please subscribe to our videos so that I can help you be a better gardener, and also so that we can share information about gardening. I would love to hear from you guys what surprising core garden concept you just learned recently, or maybe at the beginning of your gardening career, and how did it change your gardening? Let's help everybody in this gardening community grow better by sharing our knowledge, our mistakes, and what we want to learn in the future. All right, so I'm so happy that you watched this video, and what's important to take from this is that soil temperature is on a continuum. And you'll notice on this thermometer, it actually says minimum, optimal, and maximum. And what that means is that plants are going to grow throughout this temperature range, but they're going to change their behavior depending on where they are in that continuum. If you understand what that is, then you can take advantage of the season's best soil temperature to get the most rapid and quick growth out of your plants.